Wings of Fire by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Orientation Part 2. Once I settled down at the Schwartz High School, Ramanathapuram, the enthusiastic 15-year-old within me re-emerged. My teacher, Yadurai Solomon, was an ideal guide for an eager young mind that was yet uncertain of the possibilities and alternatives that lay before it. He made his students feel very comfortable in class with his warm and open-minded attitude. He used to say that a good student could learn more from a bad teacher than a poor student from even a skilled teacher. During my stay at Ramanathapuram, my relationship with him grew beyond that of teacher and pupil. In his company, I learned that one could exercise enormous influence over the events of one's own life. Yadurai Solomon used to say, "To succeed in life and achieve results, you must understand and master three mighty forces: desire, belief, and expectation." Yadurai Solomon, who later became a reverend, taught me that before anything I wanted could happen, I had to desire it intensely and be absolutely certain it would happen. To take an example from my own life, I had been fascinated by the mysteries of the sky and the flight of birds from early childhood. I used to watch cranes and seagulls soar into flight and long to fly. Simple, provincial boy though I was convinced that one day I too would soar up into the skies. Indeed, I was the first child from Rameshwaram to fly. Yadurai Solomon was a great teacher because he instilled in all the children a sense of their own worth. Solomon raised my self-esteem to a high point and convinced me, the son of parents who had not had the benefits of education, that I too could aspire to become whatever I wished. "With faith, you can change your destiny," he would say. One day, when I was in the fourth form, my mathematics teacher, Ramakrishna Iyer, was teaching another class. Inadvertently, I wandered into that classroom, and in the manner of an old-fashioned despot, Ramakrishna Iyer caught me by the neck and caned me in front of the whole class. Many months later, when I scored full marks in mathematics, he narrated the incident to the entire school at morning assembly. "Whomsoever I cane becomes a great man. Take my word, this boy is going to bring glory to his school and to his teachers." His praise quite made up for the earlier humiliation. By the time I completed my education at Schwartz, I was a self-confident boy determined to succeed. The decision to go in for further education was taken without a second thought. To us in those days, the awareness of the possibilities for a professional education did not exist. Higher education simply meant going to college. The nearest college was at Tiruchirappalli, spelled Trichonopoli those days and called Trichy for short. In 1950, I arrived at St. Joseph's College, Trichy, to study for the intermediate examination. I was not a bright student in terms of examination grades, but thanks to my two buddies back in Rameshwaram, I had acquired a practical bent of mind. Whenever I returned to Rameshwaram from Schwartz, my elder brother Mustafa Kamal, who ran a provision store on the railway station road, would call me in to give him a little help and then vanish for hours together, leaving the shop in my charge. I sold oil, onions, rice, and everything else. The fastest moving items I found were cigarettes and beedies. I used to wonder what made poor people smoke away their hard-earned money. When spared by Mustafa, I would be put in charge of his kiosk by my younger brother, Qasim Muhammad. There I sold novelties made of seashells. At St. Joseph's, I was lucky to find a teacher like the Reverend Father T. N. Sequeira. He taught us English and was also our hostel warden. We were about 100 boys living in the 3-storied hostel building. Reverend Father used to visit each boy every night with a Bible in his hand. His energy and patience was amazing. He was a very considerate person who took care of even the most minute requirements of his students. On Deepavali, on his instructions, the brother in charge of the hostel and the mess volunteers would visit each room and distribute good gingerly oil for the ritual bath. I stayed on the St. Joseph's campus for 4 years and shared my room with 2 others. One was an Orthodox Iyengar from Srirangam and the other a Syrian Christian from Kerala. The 3 of us had a wonderful time together. When I was made secretary of the vegetarian mess during my 3rd year in the hostel, we invited the rector, Reverend Father Kalathil, over for lunch one Sunday. Our menu included the choicest preparations from our diverse backgrounds. The result was rather unexpected, but Reverend Father was lavish in his praise of our efforts. We enjoyed every moment with Reverend Father Kalathil, who participated in our unsophisticated conversation with childlike enthusiasm. It was a memorable event for us all. My teachers at St. Joseph were the true followers of Kanchi Paramacharya, who evoked people to enjoy the action of giving. The vivid memory of our mathematics teachers, Professor Thotatri Iyengar and Professor Surya Narayan Shastri, walking together on the campus inspires me to this day. When I was in the final year at St. Joseph's, I acquired a taste for English literature. I began to read the great classics, Tolstoy, Scott, and Hardy being special favorites despite their exotic settings, and then I moved on to some works in philosophy. It was around this time that I developed a great interest in physics. The lessons on subatomic physics at St. Joseph's by my physics teachers, Professor Chinnadurai and Professor Krishnamurti, introduced me to the concept of the half-life period and matters related to the radioactive decay of substances. Shiva Subramania Iyer, my science teacher at Rameshwaram, had never taught me that most subatomic particles are unstable and that they disintegrate after a certain time into other particles. All this I was learning for the first time, and when he taught me to strive with diligence because decay is inherent in all compounded things, was he not talking of the same thing? I wonder why some people tend to see science as something which takes man away from God. As I look at it, the path of science can always wind through the heart. For me, science has always been the path to spiritual enrichment and self-realization. Even the rational thought matrices of science have been home to fairy tales. I am an avid reader of books on cosmology and enjoy reading about celestial bodies. My friends, while asking me questions related to space flights, sometimes slip into astrology. Quite honestly, I have never really understood the reason behind the great importance attached by people to the faraway planets in our solar system. As an art, I have nothing against astrology, but if it seeks acceptance under the guise of science, I reject it. I do not know how these myths evolved about planets, star constellations, and even satellites, that they can exercise power on human beings. The highly complicated calculations manipulated around the precise movements of celestial bodies to derive highly subjective conclusions appear illogical to me. As I see it, the Earth is the most powerful and energetic planet. As John Milton puts it so beautifully in Paradise Lost, Book 8, "What if the sun be center to the world and other stars, the planet Earth so steadfast though she seem insensibly 3 different motions move?" Wherever you go on this planet, there is movement and life. Even apparently inanimate things like rocks, metal, timber, clay are full of intrinsic movement, with electrons dancing around each nucleus. This motion originates in their response to the confinement imposed on them by the nucleus by means of electric forces, which try to hold them as close as possible. Electrons, just like any individual with a certain amount of energy, detest confinement. The tighter the electrons are held by the nucleus, the higher their orbital velocity will be. In fact, the confinement of electrons in an atom results in enormous velocities of about 1000 km per second. These high velocities make the atom appear a rigid sphere, just as a fast-moving fan appears like a disk. It is very difficult to compress atoms more strongly, thus giving matter its familiar solid aspect. Everything solid thus contains much empty space within, and everything stationary contains great movement within. It is as though the great dance of Shiva is being performed on earth during every moment of our existence.